I'm really grateful and excited to have this opportunity to meet and speak with Luca Richards. Luca, thank you so much for joining me today, and I've been looking forward to this conversation. How's your day going so far? How's the new year treating you?
Well, yeah, thanks, Todd. It's great. It's really great to be here. Well, the new year's going great. This is my first day with my head up from moving into my new place. So if you do hear some hammering in the background, it's not the wheels of my mind turning. It's actual hammering happening from the restaurant downstairs. But yeah, it's been well, moving's been a real practice of yoga uh, with my husband and working together to hang pictures and move furniture and make decisions. And it's been really wonderful and magical and uh, gelling and creating a new home together and having a lot of laughs and you know really challenging
I
opportunities for growth.
Well, congratulations. Do you mind me asking where did you move from and to?
Yeah, well, I'm from Southern Maine, so I grew up in Portland. I lived away for many years. I lived in, I moved quickly to New York, Los Angeles, Boston, Miami, where I lived for many years, and moved back here, gosh, about 5 years ago. I was lucky to be able to work remotely, even before it was happening widely.
Mm.
And so I moved back to Maine. What would happen was I was traveling so much, teaching yoga and stuff. I'd go to like cool places like Atlanta, and whoever was hosting me there would be like, "Oh my God, you've got to come check out the old Ward. They're building, they're putting like restaurants inside of old warehouses." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm from Maine, so that, like everything's inside of a warehouse." And it's so what would happen is more and more I'd come home and maybe because I was getting older or Portland was getting cooler, but I'd be like, this is a really cool spot. But I didn't think at that time I'd have an opportunity to do what I do here. That opportunity presented itself and I moved back. So I moved anyway to answer your question. I moved from Portland, where I moved back about 5 years ago, just one town over to Falmouth, Maine. So we just relocated. Just it's just about five
Nice.
minutes away, but a
Nice.
little bit more suburban,
Yep.
a little easier, a little more manicured.
Very cool. And I've never been to Maine. I can't wait to go someday. I hear it's absolutely beautiful. And it's January right now. What is the weather there? Are you guys under snow? It's got to be way colder than Florida right now.
Well, it certainly is colder than Florida. It's not snowing here right now. I think it's just cold. I'm going to be honest with you. I have not left the house today. So
Fair
it
enough.
looks cold. It looks gray. It's January in Maine. The days are short. We get our days, our sun goes down around a little after 4
Yeah. Yeah.
in the winter. And then in the summer, it's like, light until 8 plus. So we swing in the pendulum, which is kind of
Understood.
a fun adventure.
Cool. Well, I have a ton of questions for you because I feel like I'm just meeting you. I am meeting you for the first time, and I've been able to read about you and learn about your work and your journey, but I'd like to hear it from you. I'm curious, what was your foray or entry into this wonderful world of yoga?
Yeah, in thinking about coming to talk to you today, I was doing a little bit of timelining to get a sense of it. So I was introduced to yoga over 30 years ago, and well, I'm almost 50, so I'll be 50 this year, 2025.
Yeah,
Um,
man. I'm with you.
yeah,
I'm 51, so
you are, yeah.
yeah, man.
And some people, because I think I do genetically look a little young, so some people be like, "What's your secret?" And obviously, yoga is the obvious answer, but it's not that. It's just that I don't have any kids, so
I'm gonna say, yeah, you're right, dude. Yeah.
yeah, I was introduced to yoga over 30 years ago, and I've been really teaching for what is now 25 years. I started teaching and working in Los Angeles, actually working with some, I like to say like, celebrities, but D and F list celebrities, we could say, and then made some moves and continued in the field and continued to grow and opened my own business in my mid 20s here in Portland, Maine. I came back for a spell and opened a fitness studio here, and then went on to run medium-sized business in South Florida. I spent some time working in Kenya with Africa Yoga Project, and in Florida when I was there, I was sort of the director, and I was directly accountable for over 120 teachers and 5 brick and mortar locations. So it was really my first entrance into the business of yoga at a high level, other than being an entrepreneur, like really developing teachers, which has since become what I like to think is my lane or my passion. And then went on to work for an international training brand, so Baptiste Yoga. Some of your listeners may have heard of, and really traveling the world, working closely with those trainings, small trainings I would lead and then support Baron Baptiste, who's the founder of Baptiste Yoga, in his facilitation of the larger scope trainings. And then, sort of moved on and really, more recently transitioned the work of what we all know is the work of yoga, into more corporate coaching and consulting, soft skills development and training, and doing a lot of work there now, more so than yoga. Still have one toe in the door for yoga, mostly in trainings we can talk about a little bit later,
Yeah.
300 level, and I would say working with leaders on their facilitation and also giving them replicable content to be able to lead their own trainings and programs.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the timeline of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's 25 years in a nutshell. Well done. It's not easy to break all that down, all the highs and the lows into an elevator pitch, but good job.
Oh,
Um,
good.
so at 20, it sounds like around about 25 is when you opened your fitness studio in Maine. And you didn't say yoga studio, you said fitness studio. So I'm gathering at this point, had you studied or practiced with Baron yet? And or were you doing a combo of yoga and fitness in your first business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, I had done some training with Baron when I opened the business with a business partner. We I When I was in LA, I'd also trained in classical Pilates. Um, but I studied in Hollywood, right across from CBS, at a place that was it was very yoga. Like the teachers were very yoga. So it was really my first, introduction to professional teaching. And so it was a little Pilates, yes, and very strict in the classical format, but also with a very yogic sort of backdrop.
Yeah.
And so then we when I opened the business here in Maine with my business partner, she also had a Pilates background. And then she also did something called bar, which is much more popular now, but she'd studied with um, some of in New York, she'd studied with, whoever brought that up into being.
Yeah.
And so we kind of we were like, really okay, let's be honest, we did not know what we were doing. We were
Yeah.
made a lot of mistakes, and maybe for better later on, but at the time, we didn't really know what we were doing. But nobody really at that time, especially here, was doing combo sort of boutique
Mm,
fitness where you'd be like doing. We had yoga happening, we had Pilates on the machine happening, we had bar happening, we had some personal training hit stuff happening. So we didn't know better than to dial it in. We were very happy for it to be sort of
yeah.
loose and open, and it was pretty wonderful experience.
Sounds like a little ahead of the curve almost in relation to now. There is a lot of cross pollination within fitness studios. Do you feel like it is a more trendy thing to do to bring in these multiple disciplines into a single space?
Well, I'll say in having a lot of conversations with yoga studio owners, I think one of the things I always advise people to do is pick a lane. I think for the most, and maybe that comes from my own experience, but also if you don't have the bandwidth really to run multiple schedules and run multiple modalities happening at the same time, or even really be able to um, do quality control on different teachers. So what most yoga studio owners will do, especially new and out of the gate, is they'll sort of open and they'll just hire in whoever they can. And usually they're like, oh, let's bring in this person. But what happens is even in the yoga gets very confused.
Yeah.
because like I'm going in Tuesday, I'm taking Todd's class, it looks like this, it feels like this. And then I'm going in Wednesday, I'm taking Luca's class, it looks like this, it feels like this. And from a business model perspective, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and one place I really saw that when we opened the studio in Miami. So at the time I was in Kenya and I met with the owner of the South Florida businesses, and they were just opening this tremendous yoga studio in Miami. And it had like, it opened up these sliders and could fit over like 200 people.
Was that the frog one? Was there like a
You're thinking the green monkey.
green monkey? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that what it was?
It was that. Well, it was a precursor to that before we merged into Green Monkey. And what happened there was really, especially in Miami, and I'm not sure where you are, but people just followed teachers. So it was very teacher driven. So the successful studios just sort of had successful
Yeah.
teachers. And, what we were going to do is going to be very different. It was going to be very uniform. You're going to get a product. Not that it was going to be boring or the same or, anything like that. It was just that, the students could come in at 4 o'clock, whoever was teaching, and get the same product. And it was very interesting. A lot of the, very popular and successful yoga teachers came to visit, and they said to us when we first opened, this is never going to work here in Miami. This is not what people want in Miami. They follow teachers. They want it to be, much more spiritual. They want it to be more free form, more open. And we said, okay. And I will say, in the context of like 18 months, we were the biggest studio in Miami. We were just crushing it
I remember
because
hearing about
actually
you guys. Yeah, I remember. I feel like I was watching from afar your development.
yeah, people were we were just crushing it because people were hungry for consistency. It's actually, they were hungry for classes to begin and end on time, for there to be a clear structure. Not that it would be the same in every class, and certainly personalities drove the class, but we could interchange teachers. It became a really easy model in which to train teachers and have them be really successful quickly. So to answer your answer me asked me a question about 5 minutes ago, but I'll answer it now.
Oh, please.
So two things. So I learned from my own experience that being kind of wide and shallow and wide wasn't really the right model, to really go skinny and deep. It tends to be a more successful business model
Yeah.
in yoga, unless you've got like the bandwidth. But I would say even like in an Equinox or one of those big gyms where they have a variety of different classes, that's really a selling proposition. Like, we've got all this, you could do all this. But really what tends to be successful even in those businesses is what's consistent.
Mm, I agree. I agree 100%. That's so interesting. I like the juxtaposition of what you're saying with the multiple assets and your experience with trying to hold that down and then coming in with a really solid program that is very consistent. But you said for about 18 months we crushed it. I'm curious to hear from you. Well, then what evolved? Because something happened after 18 months.
Right.
Where was the breakdown?
Well, I would say it took us about 18 months to get up to speed is what I meant. And it did break down. And I'll tell you where it broke down is exactly in the moment you're referring to when we merged our original brand, which was called Bala Vinyasa, with the
Mm.
very popular local brand, which was Green Monkey. And what we had was two very divergent and distinct cultures. And one of the greatest challenges in my life was being at the tip of the spear to bring those two cultures together. I met with every single teacher from the Green Monkey, and I said, here's who we are as a culture. Here's what we want to create. This is what we do. This is what we want to invite you into. Some of them wanted to be part of it, and then those that didn't, we gently invited them to go do that elsewhere, and they did, and some of them to great success. But really, we knew who we were, and so bringing those two businesses together and expanding suddenly from 3 locations to 5 locations.
Mm.
Uh, it might have even been 6 for a short time, 6 locations, and really with two very distinct cultures. I think ultimately was it was a little ahead of itself,
Ah.
a very challenging transition.
I can imagine. So you originally were the Bala Vinyasa. That was your
Mm,
original creation with a group of people. Am I
yeah.
right?
Well, I was brought in as to direct. It was owned by a great mentor of mine, Kirsten Mooney. She owned it, and she brought me in to work there, and
Cool.
sort of I spearhead with a small team, the Miami studio, uh, until we merged and worked. And even still, it was still moderately successful. I think ultimately it just collapsed under its own weight.
Where were the six studios? Like all within the Miami area, or is it spread out across country?
We had two in Naples, Florida. We
Mhm.
had our Miami location. There was a Green Monkey in South Miami. We had a Miami Beach Green Monkey, and we also had a Fort Lauderdale Green Monkey.
Got it. Got it. And based off what you're saying, then the fact that there's these two distinct cultures, was there a bit of a battle, so to speak? That's probably the wrong word. An ego, a power trip between each side? It was like who's gonna bend here to be in control of the overall vision of the unification?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think there's always a bit of that because we've gone from strong leadership under Kirsten to her merging and working with the owner of the Green Monkeys, and they decided to stay in partnership. It wasn't a buyout,
Yeah.
and he was a businessman and saw things very a bit distinctly, and was looking at the numbers. And Kirsten was a culture person, and she knew that if we implemented a strategy of culture, we'd be able to get the
Wow.
results we wanted, but that was always a push and pull for what was happening because in order to, be successful, we weren't able to just clean house and just put in a bunch of new teachers. We really had to work with the amazing and exceptional teachers that were already at Green Monkey, but that was a very different philosophy. It was a very individual and
Mm.
this is my
Yep.
thing and this is what I
Yep.
do and
Yep. Yep.
a
Oh, I
bit.
could see where that would be challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel very blessed. It's like the work I do now with yoga studios and studio owners is really informed by, a lot of what went wrong in my own business, but even in these other businesses. And some of these places where we fell on our knees or fell on our face has been so
Mm.
instrumental in me being able to have, conversations, not just inside of yoga with yoga studios and studio owners and key leaders, but now that I do this work inside of corporate America, it's interesting how much of it translates over.
Wow. Like the core is there. It doesn't matter what the business or product or service that's being delivered underneath. There's these same challenges, so to speak, and or levers that you can pull to create success. Is that going a little too far out there? Does business actually work on levers? You know what I mean? Like you read business books and you go, that's a great idea. Whoa, I really got to implement these ideas of pull this lever and do that trigger and that type of thing. But for me personally, it's always like such an organic thing. And you just keep trying so many things. I'm so excited to hear somebody who to talk to you, to hear, you've been really working with this. To direct the question in this angle, my wife and I used to own a Bikram studio in San Diego, and then we went and studied Ashtanga in Mysore, and I had this kind of like similar concept that you're saying of like if you want to like really focus in on one thing, and we were kind of getting split in between two, and we could see the business model of the Bikram world was so good in the sense that you got one class, it's 90 minutes, it's the same 26 poses every single time. You got the class going 6 times a day. Any teacher can come in, can come out. And yet there was and people would go to Bikram, they'd be like, Bikram, you're like the McDonald's in a derogatory way. Like you're the McDonald's of yoga. And he'd be like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
the McDonald's of yoga. Thank you very much. Like this is a business model plan that works. And he was very obviously successful up until a point where I don't really look at Bikram as very successful now. But anyway, when I got Barron's book and I was really kind of under Bikram's thumb, I was so nervous about going out on my own. And then I got Barron's Journey into Power book and I saw how he kind of blended these multiple, study with Iyengar and Bikram and in the Vinyasa slash Ashtanga world. And he empowered me to think I could do this just off that book. I never met him, but I thought if he can do it, it's got to be possible, right? To kind of tread your own path. So I guess I'm curious in your observation of everything that we're speaking about thus far, can you give me a little insight into just what your experience has been working with Baron and some of these ideas about combining what we've learned all along and somehow making that accessible and a good model for making a business work?
Mm, it's a great question. I would say this. I think Barron is brilliant. He's really brilliant and really had a great listening for other people's listening, like how their capacity for actually digesting information and taking that and making it applicable. Like you're saying, just you reading the book and feeling like you could do it is, I think he'd be so happy to hear that. I think that's really at the heart of who he is, um, as a leader and as a thought leader in that way. I think he, so much of what he would refer to as his methodology is really, it's the ocean in a paper cup. It's these, and he gets it. He's lived that life, like you said, working with greats like Iyengar, um, Bikram, his family opened, brought in, invited in all these gurus from San Francisco. And, he's lived it and also somehow managed to get, maybe in his own studentship, like what goes over people's heads and how to really dial it in and how to make it just complicated enough, if not a little bit overly complicated in a simple way. I know that sounds crazy, what I just
Oh,
said.
I get that. That
Yeah,
actually makes sense. That was I know
yeah,
that is a weird idea, but that's cool, man. That's a
yeah.
good point.
Yeah, I have been lucky in my life to have, we talked about this a little bit before we started, have had really strong mentors, in my life and the mentors I needed because I think I'm uh yeah, I'm not always the best student. And so even, throughout my life, I've had these really, I think about Joe Fontecchio, who used to own the food bar in Chelsea, New York, and I worked there for a time. And I was late a few days in a row. And I think the last day I was ever late for anything, I walked into the bar and he swung around on the stool. You could smoke at the time with a cigarette in his mouth. He said, "Don't be late again." And I don't think I've been late to anything. And I think, sometimes I think I've been lucky
Nice.
to have really mentors who are courageous enough to actually say what needs to be said or to point you to what needs to be pointed to. It's the broccoli in your teeth. I've been lucky to have mentors who've said there's broccoli in your teeth. Like, stop doing what you're doing. It's not working for you. And I think Barron's been one of those mentors for me. So I had the great privilege of working with him closely for many years. I mean, I was the, first person to see him in the morning, the last person to see him at night. We'd work together on facilitation and what he was leading that day and how he was going to lead it and what it would look like. And I mean, what an amazing education that was for years to get his insights and really get a sense of what he was doing and why he was choosing to do it from behind the scenes. And again, that's filtered so much into my work now as a facilitator and coach, that I don't think I could have ever got to on my own without that,
Mm,
support of a really guiding hand. And I'm always so grateful to him and to the work he's done. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing had I not, had that opportunity.
that's so cool, Luca. You know, what are your feelings and thoughts currently about the where the state of let me see if I can let me try to do this well. The world is in flux constantly. And it seems like we're pushing and pulling back and forth from these different ideas. If I grew up or was trained the same way you were, and it's easy for me to make fun of Bikram based off of how things evolved, but at the same time, he kicked my butt.
Yeah,
He really kicked my butt. He yelled at me. He he was so intense. And as much as I'd be like, I want to be like, look, you guys don't follow that path because that doesn't lead you into greatness, taking advantage of people. But at the same time, I'm so thankful, like what you're saying.
yeah,
And I feel like we've been in a little bit of that was a push. And then we've gone through a little bit of a pull collectively into let's be nicer to people.
yeah,
Let's treat them kindly. Let's not take maybe let's not tell them they have broccoli in their teeth.
Right.
and try to get it creatively with get him to get the broccoli out. But instead of just like saying, "Hey, man, you got broccoli in your teeth," let's get creative. So I just would love to hear what your thoughts are on finding that balance between the hardcore,
Yeah.
tell it like it is, let's not cut around any corners, let's get to the chase, and being kind and thoughtful in the world of, say, trauma informed and
Yeah.
all of that.
Well, I think when you know better, you do better, as Maya Angelou would
Yeah,
said.
that's
So
a good one. That's a
I
good,
think, we
yeah,
think about where some of these large format training came from, these large group, I forget the exact name for it, but they're like, you know, essentially like the world in the 90s, early 2000s, where, and even then some where, where somebody would be, asked to share in front of a group of people, 100, 200 people, and then sort of coached by, a leader of the group. And there's so much power dynamics in that. There's so much, I'm saying in front of all these people, that's a larger group than most people will ever stand in front of, and sharing something vulnerably and being pushed, say, in a way that even as gently as it can be, like it's your choice to share, you're still in this environment in which you don't have a lot of choice. And I think that's what the important message of today is that, well, wait, why are we doing that anyway? Um, and though I think we have to be mindful when we look back that we're not looking back with eyesight from today. We're not looking back at what got us here. We would never have been able to get to the revelation that there might be a better way if we hadn't sort of gone through it's just like my life in business, right? If I hadn't messed it up so profoundly, I wouldn't have a clear understanding of what works. I wouldn't be actually any efficient at my job in any way. And if we have to, I think we sort of have to look back at ourselves, certainly in our own journeys, but also our collective journey, certainly in yoga and certainly in all of these areas of thought leadership. We have to look back and be like, well, they didn't necessarily know. They were doing what they knew to do and knew how to do. And those of us that got something, we got something. Those that didn't may have been, um, you know, may have had a bad experience, but that bad experience in itself, we could say, could be of use if you choose to look at it that way. I'm not talking about, certainly in the case of Bikram or those kinds of criminal activities.
right.
I'm not referring to that. I'm sort of more saying in general, like the way in which we're working together and talking and having conversations, it's really up to us to glean the good and let go of the bad. Mm. And I think I don't know, that's kind of the message to me is, because I get to work with a lot of younger yoga teachers when I travel or go to studios. And, it's like, gosh, it's like, I hope they're getting told the truth, at least even if it's in a nice way.
Mm, yeah, good
Because
point.
I don't know personally what a world looks like um, without mentorship.
Yeah, great point. Do you feel like there's almost the attempt to remove mentorship? Like if we're nervous about, I hear very often about, okay, the education system is so bad. I hear people saying like everybody wins an award. I hear people saying, we got to be very careful about how we speak with other people. I agree. And I'm just wondering, do you feel like there's an attempt to remove mentorship? Because like an attack on, say, the guru disciple structure, a lot of the ways that we were learning was initial, it seems to be that it was from this sort of guru disciple, the guru knows, the disciple's learning, you listen to the guru, no matter what the guru says, you follow. And there's clearly a lot of stuff that can go wrong in that model. Clearly a lot of stuff that can go well in that model. Do you feel like we would ever remove the mentor from the situation? And if we did, it sounds to me like you're feeling like that could ultimately not be a good thing.
Well, like so in some kindergartens, they arrange the tables to face each other. So that there's like 4 or 6 kindergartners and they're facing each other. And so that what they're, teachers maybe in the background talking, but what they're seeing is each other. So they're sort of learning from each
Mm.
other. Now,
Yep.
what I would say is that I'm not an expert on education, and I'm certainly not tackling challenges in young education. But what I would say is like, well, is there something to be said for students actually facing the teacher? The teacher's really the leader in the room. The teacher's the one with the experience. And if we vet and carefully place our leaders and our teachers, and if our teachers take that with that responsibility with a level of reverence that they're not sort of taking advantage of their positions of power and leadership, if we could make that assumption, then really shouldn't the students be facing the teacher?
Mm.
That's where we want to look,
Yeah. That's a good question.
for education. So,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's true in that guru model also. It's, well, I should the hammerings here. That is my
Yeah.
mind turning this time, if you can hear it. But that is, the guru, every religion, it's like not just yoga, if everywhere from, Michelangelo and apprentices to, how do you learn how to paint if you're not, there with a master learning what they're doing. And um, I see this a lot with young yoga teachers. I think they know better. They already know better. And so a lot of the conversations I have, sometimes working with newer leaders or newer yoga teachers, is that they um, sort of have it figured out already. And
Mm.
and I'm like, okay, well, I'll come back in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Let's see
Yeah.
how that goes.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your yoga teacher training that you offer and what are some of the key components that you focus on as your teaching methodology?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, you know, my yoga, my toe in the yoga business is called Lit from Within Yoga. And I do that with a couple amazing partners, Marilyn Jenkins and Karen Tyrone. And we bring very different perspectives. But we're very clear what we do is we have a 300-hour training. We don't necessarily call it a 300-hour. We call it the Good to Great Facilitator Academy. It's a 300-hour training that doesn't focus on more philosophy, more anatomy, or more of anything. It really is an opportunity to become stronger in facilitation from the classroom up to workshops, up to trainings. So really, how do I develop and create replicable content for myself? Most even good yoga teachers will show up at a workshop and they'll have a few notes on a post-it and then they'll just see what happens. And there's nothing wrong with that, and it's going to work for a percentage of the time it's going to work. But what we've found is that if we actually give people a solid foundation of scaffolding, it's going to be successful more than it's not. And even in the classroom, if we're standing in some really clear tools and skill sets and scaffolding, right, it's going to be great more than it's not. And it's going to give us an opportunity for connection versus remove connection, which I think is always the fear of teaching in a system. Right? It's like,
Mm.
no, I just want to go in and feel. I can't tell you how many times I hear, let me just go in and feel the room. It's like, no, 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 stop feeling the room, lead the room.
Yeah.
Like, don't go in at 6. It's like, it feels like you guys just want to roll around today. It's like, no, they don't. That's not why they got out of bed to come here at 6 a.m. They want to be led. They need you to lead them. And so it maybe harkens back to our conversation about mentorship. We
Yeah.
have to sometimes have strong mentors to be strong leaders, to be able to say, no, everybody, get into that warrior two. And I think that's what Bikram did really well with the 26 postures. Like you're not really having a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should we do an extra long hip opener today? We're not. And I think that's in a way why it was successful. Anyway, so what we do in the Facilitator Academy is really look at those tools in the context of teaching a class. So, sun salutations to Shavasana. What are those tools? I call them key building blocks that I've learned throughout the years of what is that scaffolding, and how does it support me in actually doing what I love to do, which is create connection with the students. It's really important. Without it falls apart more often than it doesn't. And I just see it, one of the things I see is our role at Lit from Within Yoga, and my own role is that, yoga teachers are amazing people. I really like them, and they don't stay in the game very long. You've probably seen this. they don't, it's like it's fun and it's got energy to it. And then it doesn't. And I think if we can apply strategy and tools
Mm.
that aren't just like secondary, but really at the foundation of what we're doing, then more likely those teachers will have the skills to be able to overcome those energy hurdles of like, oh, I'm kind of bored with seeing these same faces, or my classes aren't growing, or like why is this person's classes so much busier? It can be really challenging. So we move from, anyway, I'm saying a lot, but we move from like in classroom teaching to developing workshops to really understanding how those workshops get marketed, and really talk about what are the key aspects of facilitation, what you're doing here, leading conversations, asking great questions. It's essential to a career in yoga.
Oh man, I'm happy to hear everything you're saying, Luca. I like the scaffolding analogy and this building process. And I grew up with hearing this slogan as a kid, the 6 Ps, over and over again. It used to annoy the heck out of me. It was the 6 Ps are the proper planning prevents piss poor performance. And I would get told this whenever I wasn't putting proper planning into my into my strategies. And I would get so frustrated, but I think it's a really valuable idea about how important it is to actually plan and think things through and have strategy. And you're right. And when you bring these concepts into a training format, I'm excited to hear that you're approaching the training, the 300-hour training, because this is where we say, okay, this is an advanced training, or this is the training that you would do after you've already completed a training. So we can take a slightly different tack. I like the fact that you said it's not more of this, it's not just more of that. It's more like let's break down the strategy. So that's so cool, man.
Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant idea, and I'm happy to hear that you guys are having success with it, and that you've been able to collaborate with others in on the project. So that's sounds amazing, and I think I definitely have days, and I'm sure you probably would agree that maybe you can't be doing your 6 Ps for everything all the time. Like some days I do come in and go, let me just feel the room. But I love the fact that you said stop doing that. Like,
Don't do it.
dude, don't do that all the time. Like you gotta prepare and plan. So it's encouraging, gives me motivation. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
I think a couple things. I think uh, there's a I think most of us do what we do because we get something out of it and because we enjoy getting something out of giving something. And I think all the work we're doing to remain relevant and interesting and to make it, make it dynamic for the students is really sometimes in the way of that connection.
Mm, in the
Yeah.
way of the connection. So so let me just try to understand what you said. I think you said like so then in the process of building the scaffolding though, you're saying that that also can get in the way. Did I get that right? Like there's like a balance to that?
Yeah, I think so in a way. I
Yeah.
think you
Yeah.
learn it to a point that you have a level of mastery over the tools. So the tools are there to
Hmm.
support you. And then, in a way, it clears a space. It actually clears a space for what we all want, which is to connect and make a
Yeah.
difference
Yeah. Yeah.
for
Good
the
point.
students.
Wrote
Yeah, and
that
it
down.
and it's fascinating. I mean, one place we really see this at Lit from Within, one of our products that we're really proud of is that we created and sell a 200-hour training to not always to new studios, but so we have this complete product. It's a complete 200-hour yoga teacher training that works, that provides tools, that has a clear promise to allow for your students to leave that training able to stand in front of a group of people and actually teach yoga practice from soup to nuts. And then what we do is we sell that to studios, the materials, the intellectual property, and then we coach them through leading it. So we give them this facilitation opportunity, and we work with them closely, and we work with them throughout in marketing and throughout the process. And so what we've seen with that, a lot of the times, new studio owners are very skeptical to start their own 200. It feels very daunting, and it's a big project, and it's a scary project, and they don't want to get it wrong. And so one of the places that I think this model is really successful is in really clear, replicable content that you're able to read off the page. I always like to joke, like, if you handed this to my mother, would she be able to deliver this? with
Yeah.
no experience
Yeah.
in facilitation
Yeah.
and so we've refined the product so clearly that, hopefully people who want to lead 200-hour, um, trainings in their studio are able to. And really, we've worked with almost, I think at this point, 10 partners, and a lot of them have been like newer studios, or one that comes to mind, she just opened and, she was like, hey, I'm just going to do this. And she has almost 20 people in her training. And,
Nice.
I keep poking her to see what's going wrong. And she's like, no, it's going great.
That sounds cool. So, like, if we were just to say, take the pose, triangle pose, that then you are, and maybe you're doing it something different from the postural side, but if you're saying, okay, triangle pose, we're going to pick five key things that you're going to point out. Let's start from the feet and work our way up to the hand. Turn your feet this way, make the legs do this, angle your hips that way, shoulders this way, and top hand here. Now, I
Yeah.
want you to repeat that in that order of those five key points. Is that to the level that you're attempting to kind of simplify so that the process of delivering will feel comfortable and not haphazard and like, hey everybody, triangle pose. So and then having no clear direction as to how to get someone from point A to point B. Am I understanding properly some of the methodology of how you're taking this on?
Well, I would just say it a little bit different. This might be a bit controversial, but I advocate for teaching principles, not poses. I think one thing to know is that we spend a lot of time speaking to, say, the form, action, and alignment of individual poses. So, as you just did, like, hey, this is what triangle looks like. Here's kind of what's happening inside of there. Here's what's going on. And as a result, your students learn something about triangle pose, but it's not applicable to any other pose. But if we were to teach, hey, say, one key element, say neutral pelvis, right? But we were to look at that key principle through a series of different ranges of motion, say forms, yoga forms. We were to look at how neutral pelvis affects Tadasana, how it affects triangle, how it affects plank, how it affects handstand. If we were to look at how that principle is
Mm,
applied not just in a pose, but throughout the
mm,
poses, students have actually learned something. This would make a huge difference. I'll just say this. If you're doing this in a class, I would recommend this. So this, again, this is a bit controversial. I would say stop teaching everything. Start teaching one thing in your class. Say pick what I would call a physical focus. Let's say it's neutral pelvis. Show them what it is at the beginning of the class, and then keep pointing back to it through a series of gravitational forces, through ranges of motions. At the end of the class, what will likely happen is your students will come up to you with slightly different feedback than they've been giving you before. People are nice. They want you to know you did a good job. When we're done with this call, I'm going to ask you if I did a good job. As my spiritual teacher Oprah says, all of her guests, from celebrities to housewives, everybody at the end of the interview, they say, did I do a good job? Most of the feedback we receive as teachers is like, hey, thanks, Todd. I liked your class. Or thanks, I did, good job. Now, when the feedback shifts to what they got over how you did, that's when you've really landed something. So if you teach one principle and teach it in a way that it becomes ingrained in that student's body, that physical body, they'll leave that class and they'll say, oh my God, I never really got that. I never really got. You'd be like, really? You never got it? You've been taking class here for 4 years. I've been saying it. I've been saying neutral pelvis for 4 years. They're like, no, I didn't get it. But now I got it because it lives in my body. And it's that kind of system I'm talking about, from the body up into even facilitating a training. How do we get out of the what's happening, the form say, and get into what's driving that, what's causing those alignments? And each class, you gave about 6 different points of alignment for a triangle. Each class could, each of those isn't exclusive to triangle. It lives really in every pose. So we could say like, oh my gosh, here we are looking at the alignment of the poses.
nice. Love it, Luca.
Yeah.
Great little perspective shift. So then from the 200 hour perspective, if I follow your strategy and we'd start to then attempt to tackle yoga philosophy, we could then in theory if we were to say, okay, now not neutral pelvis, but let's say nonviolence.
Mm.
And then do you go text by text and or philosophy by philosophy and point out Look how nonviolence pops up in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Look how nonviolence pops up over here in the Bhagavad Gita. Have you guys taken that thread of thought over into the realm of teaching philosophy?
Well, I think again, because our focus is on sort of the how to versus the what to teach, I think those things are fascinating. And I think as a yoga teacher, because it's the ocean in a paper cup, I get oracle from everywhere. Like I get oracle not just from yoga, philosophy, and text, but maybe I'm watching an episode of The Golden Girls and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really, I really got that. Like, oh, I
I
really got
love the Golden Girls. I
that.
just
Yeah,
watched them 2 nights ago.
you
I
did. Yeah,
found,
we sort of have it in the background here sometimes while projects are happening. But yeah, it's like, oh my God, I got that. And how that maybe relates to some philosophy or how it relate. And then so I think so in the same way I would give a physical focus, I would say I would also give an energetic focus or conversational focus to a class. What I prefer for myself is I mean, I don't know how many times I've been in a yoga class and it's like some wonderful 21-year-old new teacher is like mind blown. I was driving into work today and the sun was rising and I thought to myself, every day's a new beginning. And I'm like, okay, how long are we in this pose for? It gets lost in it gets lost in the day-to-day of it. But I think if you're doing a conversational focus, it involves some key elements, which is again, this is the how to, but how am I creating that thought process throughout the class? I call this breadcrumbing, right? So say it was shifting perspectives, right? Which I could tie into a sutra or a chakra. I could tie that into a few, philosophy elements, but say basically it's shifting perspectives. I could just do things a bit different. And I could say, hey, take a look at your lower hand in side plank and then press down to lift up. Just having them look in a different direction, or instead of looking up in your, which is a bit of a
Mhm.
default, but looking up in your upward facing dog, having them look down or at a specific spot and having them experience in real time a shift in perspective. And then towards the back half of class, um, actually tying that into a deeper teacher, into a deeper learning, into, how does, to your point, like how does non-harming, how do these things um, look when they're at home? That's an old English expression, but what does it look like in real life and why does it matter? But if we're, rather than sort of these platitudes of just dropping in drive-by wisdoms, which is what we're typically doing in the same way we're cueing with everything but the kitchen sink, we're also sort of dropping in all these platitudes or jargon. So to our students throughout an entire class, and it never really reaches deeper than skin deep for the students. They're not really experiencing that. They're just hearing it. And I always say one of the biggest mistakes yoga teachers make is to say too much because it trains our students not to listen to us. Like the more you say, the more you're actually just training your regular students that what you say doesn't matter. And the more you can actually craft a class, and this is what we do inside of the 300 certainly is, and for our 200, this is what we coach our 200 facilitators to lead, is like we've got to get into something that shares something, that creates something, that gives somebody, um, something that they can actually really hold on to, not just sort of an airy fairy idea.
Yes. This is great, Luca. Good advice. I'm so happy to hear all this. Thank you for opening up and sharing what obviously I would need to sign up for and take a course. So I appreciate you, being open about all these like kind of inside information. So then I'm curious because I have to back up into a much earlier in our conversation just to pick your brain a little bit about this, and I'll pull us back to where we are now. You mentioned the Africa Yoga Project, and I recently had a chance to interview a woman named Dorcas Marungo, who is involved. She lives in Kenya and she teaches in Africa. And so when I followed you on Instagram, I saw Dorcas is also following you, and I went, "Oh, cool, that's cool." That's one thing I think neat about Instagram is that I'll just show like two or three other people that you follow that or that follows someone else, right? And you kind of go, "Oh, interesting. This person knows that person. That's kind of cool that there's a connection there." Can you talk a little bit about what your experience in Africa was? I have had a chance to travel to Africa. It was a mind-blowing experience for me. I'm curious, what was that? What was that like for you going there and making yourself of service there while you were there?
Yeah. Gosh, I just, just yesterday as we were moving in, I actually found my journal from when I was in Kenya. Um, and I was looking at it. It's so funny in the journal. I sort of speak to like the awe of it. I think one of the things I learned above anything else was like how much, this sounds funny to say, but how much joy, more joyful our friends in Kenya and certainly the Africa Yoga Project community is such a joyful community. And my parents are English, so not that we didn't have joy, but
Yeah.
we have butter, so it's like
Like,
similar to
that's
joy,
all I
but
have to
it's,
say. My parents are English. Do I need
yeah,
to say
they're English.
more?
And
Yeah.
yeah, we would have butter. But I found that joy is a close substitute to butter. Like, and my point about it is that I think my big takeaway from being in Kenya is that, um, gosh, like the what allows for now we kind of know this through Brene Brown now. This was prior to my learning about Brene Brown, but so some of this language is influenced by Brene Brown, but it's like, yeah, the joyfulness is a direct correlation to the vulnerability of the population and how much we have here and how much we're concerned with and how much that eliminates for a lot of us the experience of joy, like how much how safe for the most part we are, or how how vulnerability looks something we avoid here, but really it seems to me and through my experience it's such a clear access um, to joyfulness, to wholeheartedness, again, to sort of be filtered by Brene Brown a little bit and her teachings. But, I really saw that and got that on the ground there. And, I don't know that I knew how to be of service. I think certainly it was, probably 15 years ago now. And I think if you'd asked me then, I would have said, I'm excited to go do this for me. What a good opportunity for me. And I think, I know this is a real confession, but I think it really was that turning point for me of actually getting what service looks like, what it feels like, and how it lives and breathes inside of me, and not necessarily as a strategy to sort of accomplish something or put something on my resume or check a box. And, I don't think that was my true intention, but I do get how it opened me up to a world of service that I didn't even know I needed or wanted, to be honest.
Wow. Great answer. That was good. Can I ask then, joy increases potentially due to adversity? Isn't that an odd paradox? You use the term vulnerability. Adversity, I would think like, well, I've witnessed adversity. I know we'd witness adversity everywhere, but what I got from what you said is almost like this, through the simplicity of that challenge that might exist in a place where we have to work extra hard to get the bare necessities, to get the necessities, somehow greater joy can spring from that challenge. Did I understand you correctly? Did I get it right?
Yeah, I think
I think
yeah,
you're
I think
right. I
so.
think you're right, man. That's a really good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point. It's a good
I,
way to put that whole dynamic that occurs when you witness adversity and the realization of, for me, that was my big takeaway going to Africa. I had originally gone with the intention of working on a permaculture farm, which is kind of like an organic farm, and things didn't play out anywhere close to what I thought they were going to. And I had this big turnaround moment of, I don't really see how I can be of service here. And am I more a part of the problem by attempting to think that I could be of service than actual being of true service? And it was like this moment of like, okay, it's time for me to go. Like I had this really heavy moment of like, what am I doing? I clearly had grown up in a world that was much different, and I was so naive. And it was such a good, eye opening experience for me. I think it really transformed me in a way. So I love hearing your experience. That is awesome, man. I can't agree more with you. And I think you said it really well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love what you said too, because I don't, because I think when we're talking about yoga teachers, and I think there's probably some listening, and we love you, yoga teachers. But I
Yeah, we
think
do.
sometimes we get into it, and again, we think we're doing a we want to do we want not it's not a favor, but we want to be of service because we want to have impact on others. And that's what I hear you saying. Like, oh, I really wanted to make a difference. I wanted to have impact on others. And just the minute you have that thought, it's somewhat self-focused. The minute you
So
think like,
true.
oh, I'm here to make a difference to you, or I want to make a difference to my students, it's some, oh, wow, well, you're really in a world of self here. And I think the trick is, and I think you probably got it in Africa, and I did too, is that the trick is actually, and even with yoga students, our students, even the more challenging ones, is being open to the interplay of service isn't a one-way directionality. It's like, we are opening up into a realm of being for each other uh, in unexpected ways, and it can't be controlled or managed. And I think we see that so often, again, with our good friend yoga teachers is like, wait, are we here because we want to make a difference? Are we here to experience something in the realm of connection and humanity? And in order to do that, I have to step down off of the soapbox and I actually have to be in the space of, again, adversity or vulnerability with the students.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool, Luca. Lauren, thank you, Lauren Farina O'Brien, for introducing me to Luca because she said so many great things about you, and
It's
you're
amazing.
delivering. Thank you. I'm so okay now to fast forward or jump into another realm from there. What the work you're doing currently and the direction you're moving toward, and you made mention of you've gained, it sounds to me like you've gained a lot of skill and understanding, facilitating groups, helping to facilitate people that are wanting to facilitate. And this direction that you've moved now into, I apologize, I don't have my glasses on. Can you remind me the other website that you mentioned that is your current business that you're working with?
Yeah, sort of my access point to consulting, so for businesses, is
Thank
goodcompanycode.com.
you. Got it.
And it's just where I work out of. So I work with a couple amazing organizations, Vital Work, which is this great company, and they have a lot of national clients, and they do amazing culture development work. They're incredible people, and I work with them. And I also work here locally with the college, so Southern Maine Community College, which has been for me such an amazing experience of these last few years. Going to lead culture and leadership development trainings. It could be in a break room where halfway through, the lesson somebody comes in to get a soda out of the machine, or in a barn where we're all wearing coats, or it might be in a boardroom. It's, with waste companies and tech companies and, mechanical engineering companies. And it's been such a stretch for me. I'll tell you what, though, it's easy. Sometimes it's easier. I mean, all these years of teaching yoga teachers, um, again, I love it. Don't hear me wrong. We love our yoga people, but so sometimes I'll just say to like, I'll just say to like a mechanical engineer in a training, I'll just be like, what do you want to create in 2025? And they'll give you an answer. It's not, there's no BS. They just like, it's honest, it's open, it can be so wonderful. And having impact in organizations, I think has been the great love. It's like everything I've done has culminated to this. I wouldn't have been able to do it without yoga. I wouldn't have been able to do it without the business of yoga. But it is just amazing to work with teams and leaders and do some consulting and work with companies just in what we do in yoga all the time, which is just communicating and connecting and um, perspective shifting. That's really sometimes all it takes to make a big change for an organization who's experiencing some pain points in the, soft skills. They're really more core skills, but they're often referred to as soft skills. But, communication, listening, leadership, difficult conversations, conflict management, all those areas is where I spend a lot of my time working now. And it is, yeah, it is yoga. It's just everybody's wearing shoes and pants.
Yeah. Well, I like that you're wanting to be nice and not throw anybody under the bus, but I also maybe I'll just be not nice and take the mentorship role here. Yoga teachers, we got to level up a little bit and start getting a little more professional because I kind of I agree with you. I had a chance to go and teach yoga to a corporate group, and it was a part of a weekend corporate training, and it was such an eye-opening experience because I noticed what you said. I kind of came out of it. I didn't know what I was getting into. When I came out, I was like, do I want to cross over into the software world now, or like the computing world? Because it was so fun to be around a professional group of people that were working so hard to develop their career skills, and I was like, this is so refreshing. And I agree with you. I don't want to be too harsh on myself and my chosen profession of yoga teaching and massage therapy. And it's funny because I remember one time I just kind of was embarking on this journey of thinking like, wow, I could be a professional yoga teacher. This sounds so great. And I met this girl that just moved back. I was in California. She moved back from Hawaii to California. And I said, what have you been doing in Hawaii? And she's like, I was a yoga teacher and a massage therapist, but you know what? I can't take it anymore.
Right.
I'm doing like a corporate job. I can't handle the airy fairiness of this profession. I need some structure. I need something. And I was like, whoa, 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 that's not what I wanted to hear. Like, that's the total opposite of what I wanted to know right now. But I filed it in the bank, the cabinet. And so I hear what you're saying, Luca, and it's
Yeah.
really it's cool and it's refreshing, and I appreciate your gentleness, and it's coming through, and would you agree with me in
Yeah.
relation to this? Let's try to bring the professional quality of yoga up because there's no reason that we couldn't be on level with an engineer, the medical, the the tech and the software just computer or
Yeah.
tech development world. Like I believe the bar could raise a little and we have the capacity to come up.
Yeah. Um,
Am I getting too
but
out there?
no, it's really good actually. And I don't think it, here's what it is, as I think people want this, they do. And I don't know that, I,
Mm,
I don't know that, listen, we've got to, if we want to be serious or have seriously what we want, let me put it that way, there has to be a dedication to precision. It is only through precision that any industry, whatever that industry is, it's only through precision does anybody elevate or have any kind of structure, growth, development, or success. And yoga teachers resist precision. I can't. One of the main things I teach as a key building block is a measure. And what I say that is like you've got to start telling people how many of something they're doing and how long they're doing it for. How many of these are we going to do? And you probably get this from the Bikram world. It's like that's built into the Bikram's structure. Is like you're doing this long on this side and then this long on the other side. I don't know how many times have we been in that mystery warrior two. It's like, why am I in a mystery warrior two? Just tell me how long I'm here for, then I can give it my all. I can really give it everything I've got if you just communicate with me how long I'm here for. And yoga teachers resist precision. They love to do the count where they're like 5, 17, who cares? Numbers don't matter. And I'm like, they do matter. It's important that I know how long I'm here because that's where empowerment lives. Empowerment lives me as a student being able to actually give what I've got and maybe even find that I've got more than I thought I have to give. But if you don't give me a measure, you hold all the cards to my practice. You're too busy in my practice. I have an experience of you versus an experience of myself. Now, why I'm saying this, again, everything can point back to what we do in the classroom, but then when we look at the leadership level where you're talking, it's the same thing. We've got to dedicate to some sort of skillfulness of precision as a artist, as a teacher, as what is engineering to move people's bodies, in a lot of regards, is really important. And I think it's actually that precision that like the person you're mentioning, I think had that person been introduced to or and maybe they did on some level, but had a strong sense of mastery in the art of how to teach. I think likely it may have elongated that career. Maybe not forever, but it may have elongated it enough to overcome some of those hurdles.
Wow. Yeah. Good kind of bird's eye view there of that.
I know. I don't,
Because
yeah, I don't mean to be controversial on the podcast, but
oh dude, I don't think that's too I want you to be controversial, man. I mean shoot. Oh man, Luca, I just looked at I put my glasses on. I can see the time. We've been going for an hour and 5 minutes. I want to be very respectful of your time. I'm sure you're I know you're busy. I know you got lots going on.
yeah,
And well, I want to bring us in the direction of a closure. Um, I like the fact that you used. So maybe to bring us into closing, I love that you used the word oracle. I haven't heard anybody throw the word oracle at me in a long time, apart from last time I watched The Matrix. Can you define oracle based on the way that you used it earlier, or why you chose to use that word?
yeah. Well, because here's just as a bit of a background. I think we're so, especially in yoga, we have all this great text and philosophy and wisdom, and thought leaders, generations of thought leaders and ideas and, you know, and I think sometimes we think that we've got to repeat or share that teaching, those teachings in order to be um, teaching yoga. But, like I said, my move was yoga. My career in corporate America as a consultant is yoga. My relationship with my husband is yoga. Yoga's been the longest relationship of my life. We have good years, we have bad years, we have years we're barely speaking. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier, not with my husband, but with the yoga. And I, you know, Oracle is an opportunity to be what is the teaching of yoga, but to be present and see what's in front of you. I mean, I really believe, and I learn it more and more every year, that the universe is conspiring for my greatest good, which sometimes means I'm heading into a conversation like this, and I'll find my Africa Yoga Project journal and read through it a little bit and think nothing of it or why it would apply to the future or why it would have any relevance. That's an oracle, to have those writings in front of me and have no idea we're going to talk about it and then have it come forward in a way that I think, yeah, really closes a loop for me and hopefully shares something with the world. And that's Oracle. Or like I shared the Golden Girls, like watching, it can be anywhere. I joke about the Golden Girls. It could be off somebody's bumper sticker or a license plate or, you know, something resonates with you deeply and connects with you and reminds you of something, a deeper teacher. That's Oracle. It's a it's the sun coming up.
I love it.
It's like, oh yeah, every day is a new beginning.
I'm gonna bring it in.
Yeah,
I'm gonna use the word oracle somewhere in my speech today,
do
and
it.
and have my meaning. I'll just wait for somebody to ask me too, like what do you mean? But I like the idea. I do like the idea of living with the understanding. Or let me say this differently instead of saying I like the idea, living with the understanding of that the universe is conspiring to my greater good. Oh, that takes some pressure off.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much for
that's an
doing
oracle. See,
that.
it
That's an
connected.
oracle,
That idea connects with
right?
something deeper in you, something you already knew. It's not something I taught you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
say this just really quickly. You
Please.
know,
I'm okay. I have lots of time. I just don't want to
oh, you
hold
do.
you up. I know you might be
Oh my
busy.
gosh, I love this. I would do
All right.
this. Could
I'll
do
do
this
it.
twice a month.
Well, I'll keep going
Um,
then. Yeah.
Well, I'll just say this really quick. So in a training environment, sometimes, get together, people start talking and they start having breakthroughs
Yeah.
about something. And, I always joke, I always say like, hey, listen, if you get enough people together and you just ask people chocolate or vanilla ice cream, somebody's going to have a breakthrough. Somebody's going to like have an oracle moment. They're going to really come to life. They're going to start crying. You're going to have all these human experiences. It's not so much in what's being said. It's in the interaction and how that interaction sort of triggers what we already know to be true.
Mm.
I think that makes the biggest difference.
I like that. Just something so simple, right? Chocolate or vanilla ice cream.
I don't know. I haven't put that to the test, but I've
Opening
done
the
enough
door.
trainings where I
Yep.
feel like the question's inert enough, but it gets a big enough
Mm.
response. And I'm like,
Yeah. I
what if we
get
just
that.
asked if people wanted, boxers or briefs? And let's just see what happens?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. How are you at managing conflict resolution in, okay, we're in a group. You're the teacher, there's 20 teacher trainers, and one of the 20 has to interject, and to the point on everything you say, so much so that you start seeing eyes rolling around the
Yeah.
room. You start seeing the other people getting a little uncomfortable from the mentor role in the realm of where we want to be gentle, but at the same time direct. What is your strategy in that setting? I know every setting will be a little different, but this is my vanilla or chocolate question for you. Like, what's your strategy?
Well, I'll say a couple things. You have to know that a lot of people are drawn to the teaching of yoga because they want to create a world in which they get to lead and be heard. And so in any training, you'll likely have that, that a dynamic where somebody wants to share what they already know, or they want to share about what they already know. They want to be seen as valuable in some area. It is, a common archetype, as it sounds like you're very familiar with. I would say a couple things really set you up for success in those areas. Number one, most again, this is a precision and a tool. If your program and your section have clear intentions, okay, so say I've got somebody who, maybe say we're touching maybe lightly on anatomy, but somebody's got a lot of experience in anatomy and they really want to weigh in on what they know about anatomy, or what they know, right? It's so important to have that intention up and alive in the room. So when somebody starts weighing in and sharing, not only can we celebrate their insights, that usually helps, right? Is to actually say thank you. Oh gosh, that's really good. Thank you. And then also in the case that you need to course correct it, it's pointing back to the intention. So, oh my God, that's a really good insight. But, just as a reminder, so the intention of this training is that you leave here, able to lead a power yoga class, not that you leave here being an expert on anatomy. So we don't really cover it at that level of depth, although there's a lot of great resources. You got to find a way, and some things that you've all agreed upon on some level, so like an intention or a promise of the training, where we've all kind of agreed to this, and now we've got a place to point you back to. But my experience is, I mentioned my great mentor, Kirsten Mooney, the other day. So I used to travel with her a bit, and we used to teach at like yoga. Do you remember Yoga Journal conferences back in the day?
Oh yeah.
So we used to go teach at Yoga Journal, and she was the master at this, such a kind and authentic leader. And it would always happen. She had a background in kinesiology, anatomy, and she would be teaching something, and there would either be disagreement or somebody wanting to weigh in or contribute or collaborate. And she was just the master of inviting them to speak and hear, and then also kind of really being able to share what she had to share. And it generally really had profound impact on getting that person to
Mm.
feel heard, but then also
Nice. Yeah.
stop talking. But I think, yeah, if you've got to have a clear promise, you've got to have clear intentions, you've got to have something to point back to, because 9 times out of 10, what somebody's sharing likely falls outside of that intention, and then all you have to say is, that's outside of the intention. That's not why we're here. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that you're sharing, and this is where we're going. Come with us.
Yeah. Great answer. That's so cool, Luca. Do you, when, what type of format when you do your 300-hour training? Is this all online, or are you getting only all together, or are you hybridizing?
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to tell you, we started in the pandemic. So we started all online, 12 weekends. We've now, for 2025, it starts in March. We've boiled it down to 10 weekends. It's basically like a 9 to 5-ish on Saturdays and Sundays, about once a month, say. And we have talked a great deal about, should we hybridize it? Should we go live? And I'm going to tell you, there's something. I'm watching you here. I don't know if we're probably just listening, but I get to watch you because we're here on Zoom. There's something that you learn in seeing yourself teach. Maybe you get this. You could share on this maybe a little bit, but like I know what my face is doing when I'm not looking at myself, because I'm either looking at myself or watching a video of myself, because we edit and we send out all of the training materials the day or so after. So, in the case that somebody can't be there, we're going to send them the recording, or in the case that you wanted to hear it again, you could refer back to it. So again, you can't do that when you're live. It's just a one-time shot. And if you can't be there, you can't be there. But there's something that happens. Now, I'm not recommending people teach virtually. I'm just saying it's a great platform through which to learn how to teach, because you really get a sense of who you are objectively, sort of from out here,
Mm.
and what you look like, what you sound like.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's
Uh,
like you're almost like surprised it works so good.
yeah.
Like you would
You
have
know,
been very critical of it potentially 15 years ago, thinking there's no way I'd ever do a teacher training through the computer. And now you're actually going, oh my goodness, this is better
yeah.
than being in a room. And
Well, and we can have people from their houses and all over the country, and
yeah,
they don't
yeah,
have to, the training's very inexpensive. It's under $2,000
yeah,
for what is an extremely high quality
yeah.
product, but we're able to offer it, we're not here to get rich off it. We're able to offer something really magical at a really, without having to worry about hotels or spaces or any of that. And
Good
it
point.
checks all of those boxes. And we've talked about it over the years, and we've really heard such wonderful feedback from our participants that they're like, hey, listen, I got to wait for this guy to deliver my washer dryer. I'm here with you,
Mm,
but like I'm waiting for the washer, like they're sharing like, oh, I got to go pick up my kid. I can listen from the car. And of course, the training works best when everybody's there and everybody's present, but it does leave for people to have, especially at the 300-hour, the reality of real life.
yeah. You got to go through the whole boom of yoga in relation to see what was going on back in, late 90s, 2000. You saw it from the Los Angeles culture, like you said, almost like celebrity, these, celebrity teachers, so to speak. And then through where we are now, 2025, a whole quarter of a century. And I'm not saying that this is like such a long period of time, but, you got to see a lot of ups and downs. Do you feel like, oh, geez. Like in terms of yoga teaching, I think the thing with the online thing is that it opens up the possibility for every person who finishes a teacher training. They could teach either online, or they can pull their parent or their family member. They could teach in the park. Like there's a way to figure out a way to offer yoga teaching in terms of studios and the amount of availability for jobs. In my impression, from what I'm noticing, it doesn't seem like that there's very many opportunities within the studio realm. And one of the big things that I noticed as a yoga studio owner, my wife and I have been here, it'll be 19 years in the next month or so, is that, we just are always looking for someone that's going to stick around and actually be here long term and not give up, like you said, quickly, like hang in through the tough times and keep going. And when classes are slow, stay, keep coming. When classes are busy, keep coming. And that's one of the biggest challenges I find. I'm just curious from your perspective, what are you observing in the relation to the amount of quote yoga teachers and the amount of opportunity there is? What are you feeling and seeing?
I'll just say, listen, I think embracing attrition is a really healthy business strategy. I think, in just in looking really quickly at what you just said, I think there's something around embracing that a lot of your teachers, it will be a part-time or semi-part-time or a passion project, and life is always going to be more important. And though those teachers are still really fun and they're fun for a short term, and for studio owners, I'd say if you've got a training system that actually just puts teachers in the space that they're able to hit the ground running, you don't have to worry about attrition as much. Making sure that it's not about the teacher, it's about the structure of the classes and the time of the classes. And it removes this need for teachers to stay a long time if they don't want to. And it allows for teachers to stay, those who want to grow. It gives them a clear pathway of, hey, we want you teaching workshops. We want you help leading the training. We want you as studio manager. We want a pathway for you. And I think that that is the number one thing I'm seeing out in the world is, if you look at boutique fitness, which is dominating, like the all of the different types of boutique fitnesses. One of the things you'll notice is that it's hardly ever really about the instructor. It's really about the product. And I would say that's the bigger shift that yoga businesses need to embrace is no, 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 don't just put on a Pilates class because that's the only person who's available to teach Tuesdays at 4. Tuesdays at 4 is a great time. You've got to, if you're limited to who's teaching as a business, you're going to really suffer for it. And I think that's the biggest change we've got to make. We've got to get more on board with the systems and how to I don't know if that makes sense and how to get how to there's something to be gotten for everybody out of like, hey, if the students who come to my 4 o'clock will also come to your 4 o'clock, we all benefit, versus this very singular idea of I need to do well
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
my classes.
Yeah. Good point. Good answer, man.
Thank
Dude,
you.
well, I mean, I just love the opportunity to speak to somebody we've both been at it for a while, and I mean, I love it. Thank you so much. I mean, that's one of my most favorite things about having this opportunity to interview and converse and learn. I learned so much having this opportunity, Luca, and I'm just so thankful for you being gracious with your time, for responding to me so quickly, so positively. Like, yeah, man, let's do it. Let's go right now. Like, I'm ready. Yeah. So I feel really excited for the new year. I'm excited to see what this year is going to bring. Anything that you would like to share to now officially close our session
Mm,
together? Yeah. I thought the Oracle was going to be it, but I had a few more questions for you.
it's good. It's fun. Thank you for doing this. This is all I have. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for your commitment um, to great conversations and to sharing what it is that matters to you. And gosh, what a fun space to be invited into. So I really just acknowledge you for what you've accomplished and acknowledge you for staying in the game, and influencing, you know, years of students and teachers and letting me be part of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Luca. That means a lot to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, maybe let's definitely do it again, and I'll build a little more scaffolding, and then see if you're thinking my scaffold building is reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, reach out anytime. I love to talk about systems. I love to talk about precision and scaffolding and, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk soon.
All right. Thanks, man.